What happens when a television host refuses to play nice? In just 47 seconds, Meghan Markle went from composed guest to absolutely furious, storming off the Loose Women set after Denise Welch tore apart every excuse, every complaint, and every victim story she tried to sell. This wasn't just an awkward moment. This was a complete meltdown caught on live television. Before we get into this absolute carnage, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. We post daily videos exposing the royal family's darkest scandals, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Last night's episode of Loose Women was supposed to be another platform for Meghan to share her side of things, another chance to talk about how difficult her life has been. But Denise Welch wasn't having any of it. From the moment Meghan sat down on that purple sofa, you could feel something was different. The other panelists seemed ready to lob softball questions and nod sympathetically, but Denise had a look in her eyes that said she was done with the nonsense. The show opened with the usual pleasantries. Meghan walked out in an expensive beige outfit, waving to the audience with that practiced smile everyone knows so well. She settled into her seat, crossed her legs elegantly, and waited for the first question. It came from one of the other hosts, something gentle about how she's been coping with all the media attention. Meghan launched into her prepared answer, talking about her mental health, about how challenging it's been, about the struggles of being misunderstood. Denise sat there, arms folded, not smiling. While the other panelists nodded along sympathetically, Denise just stared. Meghan noticed. You could see her glance over a few times, clearly trying to read what was going on in Denise's head. But Denise didn't give anything away yet. She just waited. Then it was Denise's turn to ask a question. The studio got a bit quieter. Even the audience seemed to sense something was coming. Denise leaned forward and spoke in that no-nonsense northern accent of hers. "Meghan, I've got to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with us," Denise said, her voice calm but firm. "You've spoken a lot about being silenced and not having a voice. But you've done, what, about 6 or 7 major interviews now? You've got a Netflix series, a podcast, you've written a children's book. How exactly are you being silenced?" The other panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Meghan's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, Denise, I think there's a difference between finally being able to speak your truth after years of being told to stay quiet, and actually being heard," Meghan replied, her voice taking on that soft, emotional tone she often uses. "The institution made it very clear that I wasn't allowed to speak. I had to wait until I was free from that environment." Denise didn't look convinced. "Right. But you left that environment years ago now. And since then, you've had every major media outlet wanting to talk to you. Oprah, Netflix, podcasts, magazines. You've been on the cover of Time magazine. That doesn't sound like someone who's being silenced. That sounds like someone who's got quite a big platform, actually." Meghan's jaw tightened slightly. "I think you're missing the point. It's about having the freedom to tell my story without being controlled." "But who's stopping you now?" Denise shot back. "Who's controlling you now? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're doing exactly what you want. Saying exactly what you want, whenever you want to say it." The tension was already building, and the audience was completely silent. Meghan took a breath and tried to redirect the conversation. "Denise, I respect your opinion, but I don't think you understand what it was like to be inside that system. The pressure, the isolation, the lack of support when I was at my lowest point." Denise cut her off. "Meghan, I've been in this industry for decades. I've dealt with my own mental health struggles very publicly. I've spoken about depression and anxiety. So, I do understand pressure, and I do understand feeling isolated. What I don't understand is constantly going on television to talk about how you want privacy. That doesn't make sense to me." Meghan's face flushed slightly. "I've never said I want complete privacy. I've said I want to control my own narrative and protect my family from harassment." "By doing more interviews?" Denise asked, her eyebrows raised. "By doing documentaries? By having your husband write a book where he talks about extremely private family matters? That's protecting privacy?" One of the other panelists tried to jump in, probably to cool things down. But Denise wasn't finished. She had more to say, and she was going to say it. "Here's what bothers me," Denise continued, leaning even further forward. "There are people in this country who are struggling to pay their energy bills. There are families using food banks. There are people working 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. And then we've got you, living in a massive mansion in California, complaining about how hard your life is. It's a bit tone-deaf, don't you think? Meghan's composure was starting to crack. Her voice got sharper, more defensive. I think it's possible to have wealth and still struggle. Mental health doesn't discriminate based on how much money you have. Of course it doesn't, Denise agreed. But there's a way to talk about your struggles without coming across as completely out of touch. And I'm sorry, but moaning about your problems while sitting in a multi-million-pound mansion with Oprah Winfrey, that's out of touch. The other panelists looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Meghan's smile was completely gone now. Her hands were gripping the armrests of the sofa. I find it interesting that you're so focused on where I live and what I have, rather than the actual issues I've tried to bring attention to, Meghan said coldly. Racism, mental health, the treatment of women in the media, those are the things that matter. Denise nodded slowly. Right. So let's talk about those things then. You've said you experienced racism in the royal family. That's a serious accusation. But then you and Harry wouldn't name who said what. You just left this cloud of suspicion hanging over everyone. Don't you think that was unfair? Meghan's eyes narrowed. We didn't name anyone because we didn't want to cause more damage. But you already caused the damage, Denise exclaimed, her voice rising for the first time. You went on international television and basically told the world that someone in the royal family is racist. That's a massive accusation, and then you just left everyone guessing. The Queen was elderly, she'd just lost her husband, and she had to deal with this mess. Prince William and Kate got dragged into it. Everyone was under suspicion because you wouldn't be specific. Meghan's face was red now. Maybe if the institution had protected me the way they protected other members of the family, we wouldn't have had to do that interview. Protected you from what, exactly? Denise demanded. From negative press? Welcome to being a public figure, love. Everyone gets negative press. Kate's been ripped apart by the media for years. They called her Waity Katie and said horrible things about her family. But she didn't run off to California and do tell-all interviews. That's because Kate fits into their system. Meghan snapped, her voice sharp and loud now. She was born into that world, she understands their rules. I was an outsider, and they made sure I knew it every single day. Denise shook her head. Kate's not royal-born, Meghan. She's from a normal family. She had to learn the rules just like you did. The difference is she stuck it out and didn't throw everyone under the bus the moment things got difficult. Meghan stood up slightly in her seat, her body language becoming aggressive. You have no idea what I went through. You weren't there. You didn't see what happened behind closed doors. You're right. I wasn't there, Denise admitted. But neither was anyone watching your interviews. We only have your version of events. And forgive me for saying this, but your version of events keeps changing depending on which interview you're doing. What are you implying? Meghan demanded, her voice shaking with anger. I'm saying that some of your stories don't add up, Denise said bluntly. In one interview, you say you knew nothing about the royal family before you met Harry, that you didn't really know who he was. But there are photos of you as a teenager outside Buckingham Palace. You wrote about the royal family on your blog. You clearly knew who they were. So which is it? Meghan's mouth opened and closed. That's not fair. You're twisting things. I'm not twisting anything, Denise replied firmly. I'm pointing out inconsistencies, and there are loads of them. You said you got married 3 days before the official ceremony in your backyard, with just the Archbishop. But the Archbishop himself came out and said that's not true, that the official ceremony was the legal one. Why would you say that if it wasn't true? That was our private exchange of vows, Meghan protested. We wanted something personal before the big public spectacle. Then why call it a marriage? Denise pushed back. Why tell Oprah you got married 3 days before when you didn't? That's not just bending the truth. That's an outright lie. The audience gasped. The other panelists looked absolutely horrified. Meghan's face was bright red, and her hands were trembling. How dare you call me a liar on national television? Meghan said, her voice low and dangerous. I'm not calling you a liar, Denise clarified. I'm saying you lied about that particular thing. There's a difference. The Archbishop of Canterbury confirmed the wedding date. That's a fact. So either you were mistaken or you said something that wasn't true. Which one is it? Meghan stood up properly now, her whole body rigid with fury. This is exactly the kind of treatment I left the UK to escape. This hostile, aggressive questioning. This refusal to believe women when they talk about their experiences. Oh, don't do that, Denise said, standing up as well now. Don't hide behind feminism when you get called out. This has nothing to do with you being a woman. This has to do with the things you've said not matching up with the facts. If a man sat here and told me he got married 3 days before his actual wedding, I'd question that too. You're just like all the rest of them, Meghan spat. You've already made up your mind about me. You came into this interview determined to attack me. I came into this interview determined to ask you proper questions instead of letting you do another sympathy tour, Denise countered. And clearly you can't handle that. You can do Oprah. You can do Netflix. You can do all these friendly interviews where everyone feels sorry for you. But the moment someone asks you a difficult question, you fall apart. Meghan grabbed her microphone pack and started pulling it off. I don't have to sit here and be spoken to like this. This is bullying. It's not bullying. It's called journalism, Denise said firmly. It's called asking follow-up questions and expecting honest answers. But you don't want to give honest answers, do you? You just want to play the victim. Screw this, Meghan said, and the bleep couldn't quite cover the word. I'm done. This is exactly why I don't do British television anymore. You're all so bitter and miserable. We're not bitter, Denise called after her as Meghan started walking toward the edge of the set. We just expect people to tell the truth, especially when they're making serious accusations about racism and mental health crises. You can't just say whatever you want and expect no one to question it. Meghan turned back, her face twisted with anger. You know what your problem is, Denise? You're jealous. You're a bitter, middle-aged woman who can't stand that someone younger and more successful won't play your game. The audience gasped again. Even the other panelists looked shocked. Denise's face hardened. Now you're just being nasty, Denise said coldly. And for the record, I'm not jealous of someone who alienated their entire family, walked away from a position of influence where they could have actually done some good, and now makes money by constantly complaining on television. That doesn't sound like success to me. That sounds quite sad, actually. Meghan looked like she'd been slapped. For a moment, she seemed speechless. Then she found her voice again, and it was shaking with rage. You don't know anything about my family. You don't know what they did to me. Then tell us, Denise shouted, her patience finally snapping completely. Tell us specifically what happened. Stop speaking in vague terms and actually give us details. Who said what? When did it happen? What exactly did the institution do or not do? Because all we've had for years is hints and suggestions and veiled accusations, but never any actual facts. I don't owe you anything, Meghan said, her voice cold. I don't owe any of you an explanation. Then stop going on television, Denise yelled back. If you don't want to answer questions, stop doing interviews. You can't have it both ways. You can't keep telling these stories and then get angry when people ask you to back them up. Meghan's face was contorted with fury now. She looked at the producers off camera. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? Are you seriously going to let her attack me on air? One of the producers stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. But Denise wasn't finished. I'm not attacking you, Denise said, her voice returning to a calmer but still firm tone. I'm doing what journalists are supposed to do. I'm asking questions. If you can't handle questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Maybe you should actually go and live that private life you keep saying you want. You're a horrible person, Meghan said, her voice breaking slightly. You're cruel and you're mean and you clearly have some kind of agenda against me. My agenda is the truth, Denise replied. That's it. I don't hate you, Meghan. I don't even know you. But I'm tired of watching you play the victim while you've got every advantage in the world. I'm tired of seeing you make serious accusations without providing evidence. I'm tired of the contradictions and the half-truths. And I'm especially tired of watching you profit off your pain while actual people who are really struggling can't even get their voices heard. Meghan stared at Denise for a long moment. The studio was completely silent. Even the crew had stopped moving. Then Meghan laughed. But it was a bitter, angry sound. You'll regret this, Meghan said quietly. You'll regret speaking to me this way. Is that a threat? Denise asked, her eyebrows raised. It's a promise, Meghan said. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Denise said calmly. I'm dealing with someone who thought they could come on this show and get another easy ride. Someone who expected us all to nod and agree and feel sorry for them. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but that's not how it works here. This is Loose Women, not the Meghan Markle sympathy hour. That was it. That was the final straw. Meghan ripped off her remaining microphone equipment, nearly breaking it in the process, and threw it down on the sofa. I'm leaving, she announced loudly. And you can all sit here and say whatever horrible things you want about me. But just remember that the whole world is watching. They'll see how you treated me. They'll see your bullying and your nastiness. The whole world will see you running away from difficult questions, Denise corrected. Again, just like you always do. Meghan didn't respond to that. She just turned on her heel and started marching toward the exit. The cameras followed her. Her face was bright red, and you could see her hands were shaking. She walked past the stunned crew members, past the shocked producers, heading straight for the studio doors. Meghan, wait, one of the other panelists called out, finally finding her voice. But Meghan didn't wait. She didn't even slow down. Denise sat back down on the sofa and crossed her arms, watching Meghan's dramatic exit. Well, that went well, she said dryly. And despite the tension, a few people in the audience laughed nervously. Meghan reached the studio doors and shoved them open hard enough that they banged against the walls. She disappeared through them without looking back, and the doors swung shut behind her with a loud slam that echoed through the silent studio. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath. Then Denise looked directly into the camera and shrugged. I suppose that's one way to end an interview, she said. Though I have to say, I've seen more graceful exits from toddlers having tantrums. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or gasp. The other panelists looked absolutely mortified, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. But Denise seemed completely unbothered. Look, I know some people will say I was too harsh, Denise continued, speaking directly to the camera now. But honestly, I'm done tiptoeing around this. We've all been so careful not to offend, so worried about saying the wrong thing. Meanwhile, serious accusations have been made, reputations have been damaged, and an elderly woman spent the last years of her life dealing with this mess. Someone needed to ask the hard questions. Someone needed to point out that the stories don't always add up. One of the producers was making frantic hand signals from off-camera, probably trying to get Denise to stop talking, but she ignored them. If Meghan wants to dish it out, she needs to learn to take it, Denise said firmly. You can't go around making accusations and telling stories, and then get upset when someone asks you to provide details. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. The show cut to a commercial break then, probably because the producers were panicking, but the damage was done. Or maybe the truth was finally told, depending on how you looked at it. Either way, Meghan Markle had walked off the set of Loose Women, and the whole thing had been captured on live television for everyone to see.